We are live. Welcome to a very special CK podcast on this beautiful Tuesday morning. I got a very special guest, once again, my brother from another mother,
That's right.
Dr. Armando is back to talk about why Sabonis is struggling. We're going to get into all that. We're going to talk about our thoughts through the first 4 games of this series. It's been a true barn burner. The stats just came out that this has been the most viewed show in 21 years, which is amazing. It just comes to show how amazing of a series this has been. And then towards the end, we'll talk about De'Aaron Fox and what it means to have a fractured, finger on his shooting hand, how that may affect his shot. We have a doctor that just posted a quick clip. We'll show that as well. First and foremost, how are you feeling, brother?
Feeling good, man. I mean, I'm feeling better now because I'm drinking out of. I was up early. I'm in the evaluation process now for draft prospects, and so that's all I'm thinking about for NFL draft prospects and Kings basketball. That's it. There's some baseball in between there too. But anyway, I ran inside after some meetings, and I was like, I need coffee. I always drink cold brew. This is not a plug, but
Yeah.
local coffee shop. Anyway, I had to throw it in my Field of Roar cup.
Oof, I love that.
From the other night. And I mean, this is a lot of coffee to be drinking, but I feel like that's what it takes to really lock in and talk about what we're getting ready to talk about here. And I think there's a lot of things that need to be said to the fans that are listening and the fans that are joining us this morning. It's Tuesday, 9 a.m. There's a lot of things we need to say before we get to Game 5. So I'm excited to have a chance to recap the first 4 and then talk about the things you mentioned.
Right. So the stats came out that there was 10.4 million viewers, which is the most for the NBA's first round playoff game in 21 years. Again, as I said earlier, that just comes to show how talented both of these teams are. Championship pedigree on one side, an up and coming, really good, talented team on the other side. Very young, explosive, athletic, led by De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. But Sabonis really hasn't played the all-NBA level that we have expected him to, that we've seen him all throughout 82 games. Now, if you just see his box score numbers, you'll be like, he's not having a bad series. But if you watch the games, you will know that he hasn't made the same impact, right? So let's talk about that. Are the Warriors doing something differently? Is an X and O's thing? Did they game plan to perfection around this guy? Or is it just Sabonis overthinking things? Or maybe is that injury catching up to him? What are your thoughts, Doctor?
Well, I will preface this on the way in too. Like you mentioned, you're going to share. I know it's confusing for everyone out there. I didn't know all this until I went to pursue a doctorate of psychology, so I'm not a medical doctor in terms of what you'll hear later about the broken finger and how that all works. That's out of my purview and lane. The doctor of psychology that I have, I work with professional athletes and I work with them on just everyday stuff that all of us deal with in terms of mental health struggles, on and off the court related, on and off the field related. And then the other part is mental performance. And so what we'll get into today a little bit to answer your question from my perspective is more about not saying that there's something mentally wrong with Domantas Sabonis, because there isn't. The guy is a one of one in so many ways, in all the right ways. It's not about there being something wrong with him mentally. The physical part, as you mentioned, when physical injuries happen, do they affect us psychologically in our ability to play the way we want to, not only mentally, but also in our bodies, of course. But even then, that's not what I really want to talk about today. I think what I notice when I see Domantas Sabonis, Leo, is that I see a guy who's in a state of what I would call contraction. So that state of contraction comes when our brain goes into survival mode. So, and this is applicable, by the way, for all of us. So we should all be paying attention and listening, just from the fact that when life happens and there's stress and there's pressure that hits us, or our bodies and brains become overloaded, our brain goes into this other gear known as survival mode. And in that place, there are really 3 primary options, and that's to flee, to take off and get out of there, to fight like hell, right? Or to freeze up. And it isn't that one is better than the other in terms of the survival responses. In fact, you don't even choose them. So that's why it's funny when some guys go, "Oh, he froze in the big moment." He
Right.
didn't choose to. His neurophysiology, his survival response chose to freeze. Or you'll say, "I like that guy because when it gets stressful, Draymond goes into fight in his survival brain and starts antagonizing." And maybe some people like that better, but the reality is we don't consciously choose which survival response to have. So
Wow.
how does this apply to athletes? Well, here's what happens when you go into survival brain, and I'll tell you why I think Domantas went there. But when I think Domantas is playing in survival brain, and the reason we go into those places is again when there's some level of something that's overwhelming the brain and the body. And I think you mentioned, was it something they threw at him? I think that what we've seen in this series is Domantas Sabonis has been put in positions that he's not typically put in, and it's causing him to do the worst thing you can possibly do in professional sports: think. He's thinking, and we can see it, right? As fans, we can see this. And this is where I love how you said box score shows he had pretty good games. Box scores don't tell everything, right? They
Right.
just don't. It's quantitative analysis. There is a qualitative analysis that prior to quantitative analysis, this is all we relied upon, which is this eye test. We'd have people that watch players and athletes be able to look and
Right.
go, something's going on here, or something's good about this guy. So if you look at the qualitative analysis of this, I think what happened is the Warriors threw a really smart adjustment. They basically said when he catches the ball up top at the top of the key, we're gonna give him that. We're gonna give him that jumper. We're gonna give him that space. Now, the strategy behind that, Leo, as I've said before, I love basketball X's and O's, but that's something you could probably explain why they did that. We'll get to that in a moment. But the bottom line is that I think it put Domantas out of his rhythm. And then that's the number one thing. Contraction, sometimes survival mode can happen with athletes when they're out of their rhythm. I think him catching at top and not instinctively shooting that shot, which is what he's done all year. He stopped instinctively looking for that shot. And he immediately now is playing a different game, mentally, physically, whatever you want to call it. And that's in a state of contraction. He's in survival mode. Now, it gets worse. There's a snowball effect. We saw a progression between game 1 to game 4 of Domantas Sabonis progressively not looking like Domantas Sabonis. If we've watched him play all year, we see he's more tentative. He's not as aggressive. He seems a tick slower in some instances, even defensively, where the Kings like to defend as we should the
Mhm.
perimeter, which allows him sometimes to be the isolated defender. And he looks like he's playing at a different speed, slower than these guys. So when I look at Domantas, what player that's in his mind, not just a mental thing, it's a physical thing. That's why his free throws are short. So he needs to get neurophysiologically unstuck, which we may have lost all the listeners now because they may go, this is way over my head. But the bottom line is we got to get him back regulated in his brain and body so he's not in survival brain so he can start being himself again. Now, that is the challenge between now and game 5. Will that happen? Will Domantas Sabonis get back to being himself? I'm going to go out on a limb here. I said Kings in 6. I still believe that's on the table. I still stand by that prediction. I think we'll win game 5. And I do think that we have a great opportunity to win game 6. It won't be easy, obviously. But what I'll say is this, that none of that happens without Domantas Sabonis being who he
Right.
was all year. It does not happen. So to me, this is a non-negotiable that this series will come down to Domantas Sabonis. Is he going to get back to being the guy that, don't forget, at the beginning of the series, he was the advantage we knew we had over them. However, they came in with a great game plan, and that was to say, let's give this guy a look he hasn't had before, which is no pressure at the top of the key. And then what it started to make him do is not only question his jump shot, which rendered that useless, it also made him drive. And when he's driving, what do? You have a guy that's planted and waiting for him. And they're basically
Right.
saying, hey, Domantas, you want to be physical? Let me pull the chair out from underneath you and see how often you want to keep doing that, or if you start thinking about it, which he has. So Domantas needs to get dysregulated, whether it's, these are technique, whether it's neurophysiological intervention, working with a mental performance coach, which, by the way, they have a fantastic one out there in Sacramento, or it's, it's doing whatever he needs to basically get out of the funk that he's in. But we can get into what it's going to take. But it's going to take Domantas Sabonis becoming the true version of himself once again in order for that to happen. And it also starts with Domantas being honest with himself. He doesn't need to do this publicly, by the way. He just needs to do this with himself and go, I am not the true version of me. I need to do whatever it takes to get that level of self back, because without it, this team is not a team that's going to go past the first round against the defending champs.
So with that said, let's take a listen to what he had to say when my good friend Brendan asked him about exactly that.
Yeah, Domas, with them showing you a lot of single coverage, what do you feel like is the balance for you between still making plays for others and kind of getting your own?
Yeah, every game I just got to figure out when to be aggressive, when to shoot, when to run the play all the way, and that's something I'm dealing with, and my teammates have my back.
Interesting words. Something that I'm dealing with, right?
I was just go back to that. I was going to say I heard a lot in there. What did you hear in there, Leo? Yeah.
Every game, I just got to figure out what to be aggressive, when to shoot, when to run the play all the way. That's something I'm dealing with. So all that sounds like is he's questioning himself, which is disappointing. But my question to you is, you mentioned their own doctor of performance from the mental side. Is there something specific that they should do to kind of fix this on the fly, or is this just a long process that may not be able to be fixable by tomorrow?
It could be fixed in an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Wow.
That's I know that sounds crazy, and this is not. And again, Graham is their guy over. He's done a fantastic job with the Kings this year. Mental strength coach, cut his teeth, made a name in the league doing this mental performance work with Aaron Gordon before it was big. Graham is considered an OG and a really good dude. So it's, whether it's Graham or it's someone on that staff, it's basically saying they need to know about the right interventions and they need to get it to them as soon as possible. And so I'll just tell you, if he's in front of me or, one of the teams or the players that I work with, what I would be doing for him basically is saying there's a technique called EMDR brain spotting. You can look it up. It's typically used for trauma. So it's people that have been, experienced trauma. But what it's really good for and why it works with athletes really well is because what it can do is it can take them in a 60 to 90 minute session and have them at the end they report feeling more confident, more at peace, more in their bodies, like the struggles are behind them in the rear view. It's not this isn't like we drilled this thinking into them. They feel it. They get to a point where we put their brain in a setup where it goes subcortical and it can actually resolve the issues that just occurred and compartmentalize them. Once they're compartmentalized, when the past becomes, that was just the first 4 games, I know who I am, I'm a freaking beast, I'm a bull in a china shop, no one can stop me. I don't care whether the game wants me to go slow or fast. I dictate what I do. Right. When he gets in that mindset, Domantas Sabonis is unstoppable. And here's the beauty of it. If we get him regulated again in 90-minute session or 2 hours, what that does is it's not like we have to create a new person. We just want him to be who he is. And so there's so many ways to get there. A neurophysiological intervention, as crazy as it sounds, neurophysiological interventions is hot and cold water immersions. Not saying it's the same effectiveness of what I just mentioned, but there are so many ways to get you back and regulated into your body. I just hope that Domantas is using this time to be very open about what he needs to do and is willing to do whatever it takes to get there, because we've worked so hard as a team to get here, right? This is the moment where we want this to be a fair fight. And Leo, I think that if it is a fair fight, and this isn't me hedging or right, putting anything else, I'm just saying, if this is truly a fair fight, if Domantas Sabonis is back to being Domantas, even with Fox, and we'll get to the injury there in a minute, I still think this team personnel-wise, I still think this team chemistry-wise, despite the last 2 games the Warriors had, I still think the Kings are better. And so that requires Domantas to be Domantas. And of course, it does require Fox to be able to go out and perform at a pretty high level. But Leo, didn't that injury happen in the last 4 minutes of the game? I mean, he played the last 4 minutes, right? So yeah, tell me more about, I know you looked into the injury.
So the adrenaline, they say the adrenaline is a real drug, right? It truly helps you out. He was extremely hot in the moment, a true competitor. So he played with that with the last 4:35 of the game. But when that wears off, we know how it all is, man. Once your body gets cold, it's a little bit different. I don't think he had realized it. So now that they're talking about potentially putting something to protect it, and it's on his shooting hand, so it's a lot different than what Sabonis has on his right hand, right? Because they're both left-handed players. So it's very difficult to even expect De'Aaron Fox to come out guns blazing, shooting at the same type of level. A lot of people want to compare, De'Aaron's injury that we don't really know that much about yet to Kobe. And Kobe won Finals MVP, Kobe did this, Kobe did that. And I'm just like, well, every injury is different. And it's really unfair to put that type of pressure, especially from the great Mamba. Not to say that Fox won't do it. In my heart, I do believe that he's going to play the game. But as I told people, even if he plays the game, he may not be the same. And if he's not the same, is he hurting his team? Is he still helping his team? We don't know that yet. And if he does, are people going to still question him? Are people going to be like, well, he played, but he wasn't very good. So it's almost like a lose-lose, because we all know that the Warriors are going to swipe down consciously and unconsciously, because that's just what you do as a competitor, knowing that may give you the advantage. And we've seen them swipe at him literally all series long. Now especially, they going after that finger hands down every time he drives. So that could cause to even further damage, which again, does this team have the personnel to play Game 5 without him? It's going to require Sabonis to be Sabonis and play at a super All-NBA, first All-NBA level, just to be that mega star, at least for one game. Can they do it without Fox to buy him time? And then if you win that game, you set him out for Game 6, and then you bring him back for Game 7. If there's a Game 7, in my opinion, that's how I would go about it, just because I don't know how dangerous this injury could be long term. Now, some people might say, well, he has a whole off season to fix it. And I'm just like, well, it's not that easy. Like, what if he does further damage that could affect him long term into next season, into the next years? We don't really know, but let's listen to a doctor that had this to say about the exact injury.
Hello, everyone.
Right now.
It's Dr. Neerav Pandya. A lot of Golden State Warriors and Sacramento Kings fans have questions about De'Aaron Fox's finger injury. Here's a quick breakdown of finger fractures in general, what determines if an athlete returns to play, and what exactly is an avulsion fracture. Now, the first important thing to understand is that many times athletes will suffer a finger injury, but they can continue to play because the pain and swelling and sometimes the adrenaline from the game itself will not actually stop them from performing on the court. But then when that pain and swelling begins to set in, many times hours after they've actually injured it, an x-ray may show an injury such as a fracture has actually occurred. The second important thing to understand is not all finger fractures require surgery. If the fracture is stable, the bones are relatively aligned, there's a minimal risk of that fracture actually moving, or it's in a non-critical location, many fractures can be treated without surgery. But that doesn't necessarily mean that athletes can return to play if they don't need surgery. There are multiple factors that go into determining whether an athlete can return to play with a finger fracture. First of all, the athlete has to have good pain control, they have to not have a lot of swelling, and they also have to not have a lot of stiffness. If those things are under control, then an athlete also must be able to protect the area to make sure that there's not further injury. So sometimes, even though they may have control of pain, swelling, and stiffness, sometimes the taping or the bracing that they'll need to do to protect that injury may make it difficult for them to play, such as in the index finger of a shooting hand. The next thing to understand is that what exactly is an avulsion fracture that was just reported by the Sacramento Kings. An avulsion fracture is when a piece of bone is actually pulled off by a ligament or tendon. Now, there was a report in the media that this was an injury to the tip of his index finger. So what that basically entails is that this bone, which is called a distal phalanx, has basically three main structures that can pull off a piece of bone. You've got your extensor tendon, which is basically on the top part of the finger that helps to basically bend at this joint. You've got your flexor tendon, which helps to bend at this joint down. And then you've got the ligaments, which help to stabilize the joint. All those structures can potentially pull off a piece of bone. The key thing to understand is that case, not only do you have a piece of bone that needs to heal, but you also have a ligament or tendon that may not necessarily be doing the job that it needs to for that finger to function. The key thing is that when you're looking for an athlete return to play, number one, you need to make sure you have a fracture that won't get worse, that will heal on its own. Number two, all the clinical signs, the pain, the swelling, the stiffness has to be under control. Number three, they have the bracing or taping that will help to protect the fracture, needs to not inhibit their play. And number four, if it is an avulsion fracture, what has pulled off that piece of bone needs to not impact finger function. So if you have an injury to the flexor or extensor tendon and you can't actually move that finger, it can impact play. Or if an injury to the ligament, which makes that finger unstable, even though the bone piece may be small, it can make it very difficult to return to play. The exact fracture pattern and the clinical symptoms of the patient will determine whether an athlete can play and taking in the risk of further injury. Thank you.
So what that means is every time he catches a ball in the pass, every time he dribbles, every time he shoots, it's going to be painful because it's this part of his shooting hand. And if that's the case, it's a lot different than what Sabonis is dealing with, obviously on his weak side hand. Your thoughts on what this doctor had to say?
Yeah, I think all the points. I think the point that you make, honestly, is probably that's the sort of perspective that we probably want to have as an organization, if we're really looking at this from an eagle-eyed perspective of, okay, look, this is our franchise centerpiece, and the future is bright. It's only going to get brighter. He's young, all those things. The others, but so I understand that. For me, I have such a hard time not going into this, uber delusionally competitive mode, saying, with all that said,
he's playing. He's playing, but
yeah, he's playing. I think that what the explanation tells me is, the more we hear it, if we face the facts for what they are based on what he just shared, right, that his game is going to be impacted. I think the thing I want to say to Kings fans is that this is a collective message to all y'all, is that we are so damn quick. We just started this at the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to go back. Now, this is like, let's close the door. Let's talk as a family here, Kings fans, because we were so damn quick to just go into the series and put all our attention on the Golden State Warriors. And then we won 2 games, right? And then put all our attention on them playing at home, and then play all our attention on Draymond, and then all of our attention on Fox's finger. And even me talking about Sabonis, I guess you could say, is putting attention on other things. The reality is this, man. This is the playoffs. We don't know. Memphis, if you would have asked them last year, would have done anything they could to preserve their future because they assumed their future was guaranteed. Mm-hmm. Last I checked, it ain't guaranteed. Facts. A year later. So we here right now. Yep. We are tied 2-2. We have a home game on Wednesday night, a game 5. I'm sorry, Kings fans, but can we focus on in-house real quick? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, man. I don't give a what about the injuries and all the other things. We still have what it takes to win this series. And De'Aaron Fox's game will be altered 100%. What it will require actually is maybe De'Aaron to rely less on the three-point shot and go to the hole more, which, again, am I criticizing De'Aaron for taking threes? Absolutely not. The guy has been incredible from downtown in this series. He's made huge shots. However, I'm saying let's look at this in-house, control what we can control. Let's say that this changes Fox's ability to have touch on his shot. What does it create the ability to do? Well, I don't know if anyone's playing with broken fingers and digits before, but one thing you can do is you can sure as hell get to that hole, and you can definitely find a way to get it off the glass and shoot free throws to an extent. Those are the things that I think that's the adjustment De'Aaron may have to make. He may need to go to the hole more. I'm not necessarily unsure that that's not an actual good thing for us, for him to go to the hole more, especially if we want to get Sabonis to be Sabonis again more, and allow Sabonis to not be the facilitator at the top of the key, but instead the guy that De'Aaron drops it off to. So I think that there needs to be an adjustment there. But here's the other thing too. This is why I'm not panicking. I think De'Aaron plays. I think he still gets 20 a game. I think it becomes something we don't think about going into game 6. I think it hinders him more than he'll let us know. I think there's more pain that he'll be in than he'll let us know. Right. And I think he'll play well enough to make us forget about it. But who's the primary ball handler when De'Aaron's not primary ball handler? Who is it? It's Malik, right? It's Malik. So
he has to be huge.
Here's another guy that we said at the beginning of this series, in our first one, I said 20 points a game for Malik Monk in this series. Mm-hmm. He's going to play at a really high level. Why? Because this dude is a winner. just like De'Aaron is. And winners find ways to win despite injuries, circumstances, matchups. Sometimes you look at it and go, how, bro? Like, how did you win that? Because some guys are just dogs. If Malik ends up taking the ball up the court more and being more the facilitator, I like that, because at times I want more of Malik in a series like this. So again, I think that it will affect Fox, but I go back to the initial point, which is we're deeper than they are. Their bench played really well. You know, their role guys played. Moody played really well last game. We are still deeper than them. And we all know. I mean, what's so cool, Leo, isn't it fun to watch like the nation wake up to these guys that were like,
we've been watching.
You act like I have not been telling you all year about Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox. You act like y'all just waking up to Davion Mitchell being fun to watch on defense. Like you really, and he can knock that shot down too. Like you just are realizing that. So I think our depth that we have, especially at the guard position, make it so that even with Fox not being able to shoot as effectively, I would imagine that's probably just going to be out as a result of this injury. I think even with that said, I still think that the Kings have the personnel to adjust. And I hope it means more physical basketball down low and more driving to the cup.
So I'll say this about your point of living in the now. And I say this almost every show. It's like people want to say, oh, Monty McNair will figure it out in the summer and we'll get better. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about the summer. I want to talk about next year. I want to talk about right now. And the Kings have a great opportunity to make it to the NBA Finals. Like, it's not crazy to think that at all. A lot of people think this should have been the Western Conference Finals, and we're having these two teams play in the first round. So to me, it's no. Let's focus on now. As you said, they have a great opportunity to win Game 5 and to have a chance to close it out in 6. If you don't, you still got to come back to your home floor where the Golden State Warriors have proven all year long that they cannot win on the road. And to your point in the first show, you really woke me up to the idea of this switch of being able to turn it on and turn it off real quick. And if there was a team that could do it, it is this team. But as you said, it's not the same team. The personnel is the same. But whatever that mindset is, them not treating the game with respect all season long, it's showing, and it showed in the first 2 games. And now their pedigree kind of came back when their backs were behind the wall, and now it's 2-2. So kudos to them, but the Kings still have a great chance to win this game Wednesday night. And as opposed to focusing in the summer, nothing is guaranteed. We don't know if Sabonis. We don't know if Fox will get hurt next year. Like, all this shit happens every single year. And as you said to the Memphis Grizzlies, like, Ja hasn't been the same since all this other stuff happened. Since he said, I'm not worried about nobody in the West. I'm not worried about the Celtics. Then his gun stuff happens. And then the injuries happen. It's just, we don't know what's going to happen. Same with the 49ers, with Brock Purdy, with all these quarterbacks that went down. Like, who would have thought? Like, we don't know. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. So as opposed to thinking, in theory, the Kings have a bright future because they have a superstar in Fox, but we don't know what's going to happen. So live in the now, try to win these games, and then just try to make the furthest push you can this year.
You have to, and I think part of what you acknowledge too is the fact that let's realize the business of the game too. So for a general manager in this league, if you would have said to a general manager, hey, you're the general manager of a team that's got Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, and I'm going to give you 3 or 4 years to figure that out. You're like, bet, man. Like, but you know what happens to these guys, right, is a year or 2 in. So here's the reality. Monty McNair is all gravy right now, but you better believe this summer about to be different for him. Next year will be different. The trade deadline will be different. The pressure will continue to mount the more that we don't cross over and make that next step to make a move. Now, I'm rolling with him. He may end up being wrong, and I'll go down.
It's the honeymoon phase right now, but you're right. It's just cool.
I'll roll with him, but the reality is that there are many intelligent general managers in this league who have made really good basketball moves that did not pan out because, as you said, We can't predict injuries. We can't predict so many different variables. So again, we're here right now. And that's where, part of my gripe, Leo, I think in part with sports just in general, is that, I mentioned this before, but this is, I'm getting ready to turn 40. So I'm starting to have I think when you turn 40, you get your old man gripes, right? So it's here's my old man gripe, man, but the competitiveness of, I think some of this too of screw tomorrow. Only one thing matters. It's game 5. And the beauty of it is while sometimes to be real with you, my brethren in the fan base, I can get frustrated with because of our lack of a perspective about how important the moment is and how important it is just to compete and stop complaining about the things that you can't control. At the same time, the one thing that I rest easy with is knowing that, I hate when athletes say this. And so I'm going to preface that, or coaches say this, talking to fans, or you haven't been, look, you've been in locker rooms because you went in there and you interviewed these guys. You got a sense of what it's like. I've been in there doing the work that I do. When you're in a locker room, you start to realize that some teams and some players truly do have this is a whole other topic, by the way, a really unhealthy pulse on what the outside world is saying about them. And then you have other teams and players that just don't give a shit. And I'm sorry, but I truly have had a heart. That's why I've always been so frustrated with the Kings fans focusing on who we're playing and all. I truly believe this team is full of dogs. So the beauty is that this talk is more for us as it's group therapy for us as a fan base, because the reality is those guys in the locker room, they are dogs, bro. They're coming out the same way that we want them to come out, being competitive, not focusing on these external factors, Fox's finger. They're going to come out and they're going to see this as an opportunity to play game 5 in front of the loudest fans. It's not a we have to, it's a we get to. And the we get to is, damn, we get to play in a game 5 in front of the loudest fans that exist in professional basketball in the world. We get to play in a building in a game 5. I'm sorry, Sacramento Kings fans. When I think game 5, I think about these cups right here because I had one fall on my head when I was up in the nosebleeds back when Bibby hit the shot against the Lakers. Okay,
that's crazy.
When I think we own game 5s at home. Come on now, man. We own game 5s at home. It's in Sacramento. Look, when we stop focusing on the other variables and we take on the mindset of our team, which is competitive, right? And we get that grit going. Sacramento, we've been counted out so much. Are we tired yet of people from the Bay talking about us like we're some like where we shouldn't even be invited to the family function?
Facts. I hate that.
Who invited you? What do you mean who invited us? We're right down the road, bro. We put on for the Bay, but you want to act like that? That's fine. We've all had as a city this mentality like we've been overlooked. This is our opportunity to say, I'm sorry, but forget all the other variables. Lock down and compete right now. We have a game 5 at home. As last I checked, still home court advantage. This series has not started. There's not been one loss on a home court. So this series is still firmly in the control of the 3 seed. Who's the 3 seed? It's us. Why are we the 3 seed? Because we were the better team all year. Are we still the better team? You better believe we are. I know they got the momentum going those last 2 games. But like you said, Leo, the narrative that Doris Burke, I got to say this, the narrative that Doris Burke was telling is the narrative the nation's telling. Thank you, Doris Burke, for being a mouthpiece and a representation to what everyone thinks about us. Thank you for being honest with us. Because what happened at the end of that game was you told the narrative, you took a very square peg, which is the Sacramento Kings, that are a young team that you assumed fit into a round hole that said inexperienced, the playoffs, they don't know what it's like to be here. You didn't watch us all year. You don't know our personnel. You don't know our head coach. You don't know our grit. You don't know our mentality. And guess what? Your other narrative was the Golden State Warriors are going to turn this switch late in the game and become magically who they always were. Well, guess what? Down the stretch, last I checked, there was an egregious error made in that game. And it wasn't made by the younger team. However, Doris Burke, she had the audacity to just glaze over that and still tell a narrative. Isn't it fun to tell a story and just cherry pick little information? The reality is This Sacramento Kings team continues to be counted out. It's a cute story, a cute fan base, a cute 18-year drought that y'all just broke. No, forget that. This is a real team. We're full of competitors and dogs. I don't care how much playoff experience we have. Malik Monk's a dog. I don't care how many times he's played. De'Aaron Fox is a dog. Davion Mitchell. Y'all are starting to figure that out, but you're still a step behind. So I guess what's going to have to happen is on Game 5, we're going to have to show you what the reality is. The Golden State Warriors did not play like a championship team clicking on all cylinders last game. They played their best game, and we lost by 1 on the road in a game they had to win because they didn't want to go down 3-1. What?
And a game where they had a lot more free throws and a lot less drives to the rack, where a lot of those free throws came from jump shots. And a game where Draymond Green had 6 free throws to Sabonis' 0, which is, I'm just saying, it's a little bit crazy.
If they beat us, Leo, then you know what? Handshake, y'all go. Let's go. Come on, you beat us. But here's the thing. I don't think that they can beat us. I don't think they can square up with us and beat us. I just don't think they can. And again, I love it, bro. I love it because this national narrative does not understand what's cooking in Sacramento. You can only understand it if you're like Leo and you broke down the game film of every single game all year long and you were in the locker rooms and you felt the vibe and you felt the energy and you felt that confidence. Some of these things can't be measured in box scores, but I'm telling you right now, I hope the Warriors default to this too cool for school mentality they had all year in the regular season, disrespecting the road like it was no big deal. Well, last I checked, y'all better win a road game. So if you want to come in here with that mentality of like the Kings are going to roll over, they're going to become the Kangs overnight, I wish you would, man. The Fox injury, we got Sabonis domed up. There's no way he can get back and ready for. I wish you would, man. I think the best is yet to come for these Kings in Game 5. The competitiveness, what an environment we are going to have.
Incredible.
But the Kings are going to win Game 5, man, at home. And it's because of the grit we have, and it's because of the team that we have, and it's because of the vibe we got, man. There's just something special about this group.
And to your point real quick, I had the Warriors in 7, you had the Kings in 6 in the first podcast because we have to make the predictions. But I believe, have to listen to you just in that first one, that I gave the Warriors way too much credit because of the championship DNA, the championship pedigree. The reality is, as you said, from a mental perspective, from a professional side, like, it's hard to really turn that switch on like that, no matter who you are, whether you're Steph Curry or not. Like, that's incredible hard. And I think from other fans on the outside looking in that don't have that much knowledge on this whole mental side of things, like, that's a real thing. And I saw that the first 2 games, and that was like, okay, the Kings are a better team right now. Now, if the Warriors were last year's team, right, at their peak against the Kings' peak, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I would say the Warriors are a better team. But right now, on April 25th at 9:45 a.m., the Kings are a better team slightly. Yes, the room for error is very marginal. It doesn't help that the refs have really given the Warriors a lot of calls that have kept this game close. Like, to me, Game 4 shouldn't have been that close. That's where the pedigree kicks in, when the game is close and they have to execute. With that said, they almost screwed it up. But kudos to them double teaming Fox and saying, anybody else beat me. So that was an incredible adjustment on the fly from a team that has experience. So I understand that. And those are the moments where I'm like, okay, the Kings should have never been in this. They should have been up 7, 8, 9 points. They weren't, and that's where they got to close out. I would have liked for Harrison Barnes to set that screen and get the hell out of the way, because you got the switch you wanted onto Steph Curry, right? You had that one-on-one, but what he did was he brought his man over, which was Draymond, to help, and then the default was just to give it back to HB for that shot. But if he gets the hell out of the way and he just goes to the corner, yeah, it's a great look. But the shot was for De'Aaron Fox to, drive on Curry.
With him taking it, of course, yeah.
So it is what it is. Those are the adjustments that you got to make as a head coach, as a team, in those types of moments. And Draymond Green comes out and says, well, Harrison Barnes didn't invite me to his wedding. He invited everybody else, Clay, Steph, and a lot of it too. I'm
so sick of talking about Draymond Green, man. I'll tell you, bro. Like, it is wild. Like, and I've always loved what he offers as a player. you know.
Me too. Me too.
You know, but I can't stand when this is the best you'll get from Draymond Green. You talked about like the psychology of athletes. The best you'll get from Draymond Green is in you said honeymoon earlier. It's in his honeymoon phase. Draymond's the type of guy that you give him an inch, he takes a mile. He goes so far off course that you then have to reel him back in and hope that he still respects whoever reels him in enough to then feel ashamed almost to a degree, put himself in the doghouse, and then prove his way and climb up back. When Draymond came into this league, the reason that he made it is because he had this mentality of outworking everyone. He shed weight. He did everything. He worked harder than everyone. And at a certain point, I think he relies too much on his mouth and talking as opposed to just putting his head down and playing, which I think he did more of last game, and we saw a different Draymond Green. You know, I think also to go back to that earlier point, can we turn it on? I want to expand on that point. Steph can turn it on.
Yes.
Clay can turn it on.
Yep.
Those guys are two of the greatest. They're Hall of Famers.
Yep. Hands
down, period, end of story. And by the way, like if you guys want a little hack to watching the Kings play against Steph Curry, someone, I forgot who I watched one of the games. Oh, it was my buddy who came into town, Zach. Shout out to Zach. That, you know, he basically said every time Curry shoots, I'm just assuming it's going in. And I laughed at it at first, and I thought that's actually a comfortable way to watch the game. He's that good. I have enough respect for him of like, if he gets his shot off, it's probably going in. Curry can turn it on. Clay can turn it on. So they can play all regular season and act like it's no big deal. Clay, I still think had more to prove this series. He shot really well. I don't think he shoots this well next game, but that's just a hunch. But Curry can turn it on. The problem is that basketball, at this stage of basketball, we have, and this is what's been fun, we've started to see the better teams survive. So you need to have the star pieces. You need to have the guys that can turn it on at will. But you have to have cohesion of a team. That's what takes you through these difficult series. And I just have not seen that. Again, and if they do it, by the way, not only was I wrong, but it showed me the depth of their excellence. If the Golden State Warriors are able to actually treat the regular season road games like they did, right? Just completely deface them. And then turn it on and win an important road game here, because they're going to have to win one of them if they want to win this series. Then hats off to the Golden State Warriors.
Right. 100%.
They were able to turn it on more than I thought they could. But that's the issue. A player can turn it on. Can an entire team turn it on? No, I think that takes time. And I think the Kings have that advantage again because they've had this chemistry.
It's a great point.
You just have to feel and watch all year long. It shows in the efficiency of their offense. When this team just trusts themselves and they are themselves, it's really tough to count them out. And I think that they're better than the Golden State Warriors.
Let's end it on that, man, because I want to end on the optimistic. Actually, I mean they are better than the way. It's not just optimistic. It's a fact. Like they were better all season long. They were better through 2 games. And at the end of the day, they're still better because they have home court advantage. And like you said, the loudest fans in the NBA. They got to come into Golden One Center and win one of those games. What a time to be alive, Doctor. It's been a pleasure talking to you, man.
It's been a pleasure. With that, I want to say this because this is something I'm speaking right to the soul, and this is my outro. Okay, listen. If any of you went to those games, you felt what that energy was like. If any of you have been to a professional sporting event in Sacramento at Arco Arena in the postseason or at Golden One, you know the vibes and you know what that feeling is like. What's really cool about sports is the fact that there are some fan bases that have truly experienced what it's like to affect the game. It doesn't happen a lot. We like to think that we affect it more than we do. We actually probably don't. But there are few instances in the history of professional sports where I truly believe that fan bases have some level of impact. I don't know how strong, but they have an impact. The Sacramento Kings have 2 home games left, right? We have 2 home games. Think of it a different way. We just got to win at home. I want every single person in Sacramento who's going to be in that arena or watching that game to just send the craziest type of passion and energy that we've ever sent. I want us to delusionally think we can impact this game to a degree that is rarely ever impacted. But here's the thing, guys. I believe we can. it's not, as I said in the first time we talked, because I think Steph's going to get shaken by the moment. He is not. Or Clay. He is not, right? But for a young team that's full of dogs, when you have an arena that loud, that's only going to bring that inner dog out more. You better believe, Sacramento Kings fans, that we have the ability to impact the game. But if we are focused on officiating, or focused on injuries, or focused on the opponent, we can't do that. We need to be focused on this belief that somehow, some way, this is a team of, I hate to say it, but we have to believe that this is a team of destiny that is destined to win this series because we're better and there's something special about us. There's that X factor. As fans, we need to show up and put all of our reservations aside. Stop hedging, Kings fans. Stop saying, wait till the summer like we talked about earlier. Or, well, if we win 2 games against the... No. Don't be afraid to go all in. I know it's scary. Go all in on this team right now. If you're at that game, if you have a voice when you leave, that's a problem, bro. And you got to live with yourself. You need to be hoarse. I want it difficult for you to talk. I want your energy depleted on Thursday morning. I want the queued up email to your boss saying, I cannot come in. I can't even speak. I'm an emotional wreck because I'm so depleted because I just left everything out there for my team that we could make a difference and win this ball game. Now we are going to Golden State to win the game so we don't have to come back home. We have control of more things than we think we do, including as fans. Focus on what we can control. Focus on believing in this team, that this team is destined to do something that at the beginning of the year, if I would have told you we would have beat the defending champion Golden State Warriors in the first round, and we were the higher seed, you would have said, bro,
You're
what?
crazy.
You are. What?
Yeah.
That's what's in front of us. Let's go, Kings.
Hey.
Kings in 6.
Kings and 6. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. On behalf of the entire CK family, we'll see you very, very soon. Peace.